Jordan watched Norman across the polished expanse of the courtroom table, and it was as if she was seeing him for the very first time. 12 years of marriage, 2 children, culminating in this desolate unravelling. He exuded a smug satisfaction, a quiet triumph that settled upon his features like a poorly chosen mask. This very air of self-congratulation stung her far more deeply than the betrayals themselves, than the countless small surrenders she had made for the sake of their children, for the fragile illusion of a family that she now understood with aching clarity only she had truly cherished. Norman was leaving for Sienna, a woman radiating a youthful vibrancy, a sharp confidence that Jordan, in her devotion to home and motherhood, had perhaps unknowingly dimmed within herself. He displayed not a flicker of concern for Trevor and Molly, his own flesh and blood, as if they were mere acquaintances he was inconvenienced to acknowledge. Child support? Yes, he would of course adhere to the legal obligation, but without an ounce of genuine care, and certainly for the bare minimum the law required. Sienna's needs, after all, would take precedence. The judge's voice, crisp and formal, sliced through the tense silence of the courtroom. "The court grants the decree of divorce." Jordan heard the words as if whispered from a great distance, the pronouncement echoing in the hollow chambers of her heart. It felt surreal, as though the judgment pertained to a stranger, not the woman whose 12 years of interwoven life, fragile hopes, and cherished dreams were now dissolving like dust motes in the afternoon sun. "It is finished." A quiet voice within her conceded, yet a tremor of disbelief still ran through her. But the true drama unfolded in the aftermath. Norman, his posture subtly emboldened by Sienna's unseen hand guiding his actions, turned to Jordan, a glint of something akin to triumph in his eyes. Even Helen, Jordan's seasoned lawyer, a woman whose gaze had weathered countless legal storms, drew her brows together in a sharp frown. "I demand the return of all the gifts," Norman declared, his voice carrying a sharp edge that belied the supposed amicability of their separation. His gaze locked onto Jordan, a challenge blazing within it. "Everything I have given you over these years, and to the children as well." A wave of disbelief washed over Jordan, leaving her momentarily speechless. Gifts? The sheer pettiness of the request stole her breath. She had braced herself for legal wrangling, perhaps even veiled accusations, but this was a new level of indignity. "Are you serious, Norman?" she managed, her voice a strained whisper, as she fought to maintain a semblance of composure. "Absolutely," he replied, a smug smile playing on his lips. "Every last trinket. I have spent a considerable sum on you and your offspring, and I intend to recoup my investment." Beside him, Sienna stood like a shadow, a predatory smile curving her lips. It was clear to Jordan that this vindictive demand was Sienna's brainchild, a calculated attempt to strip away not only material possessions but also Jordan's sense of worth. "She wants to see me grovel," Jordan realised, a flicker of defiance igniting within her numbness. Helen immediately stepped forward, her voice firm and professional. "Your Honour," she addressed to the judge, "with all due respect, gifts exchanged during a marriage are typically considered unconditional transfers of property. There is no legal basis for their return." She then turned to Jordan, her gaze conveying concern. "Jordan, you are under no obligation to agree to this." Even the judge leaned forward slightly, a hint of disapproval in her voice as she addressed Norman. "Mr. Reed, the lawyer, is correct.
Such a request is not legally enforceable in the context of a divorce settlement.
Then she looked at Jordan, her expression softening with a touch of sympathy.
Mrs. Reed, please understand that you are not required to comply with this request.
Jordan listened to her lawyer and the judge, a part of her acknowledging the sound legal advice. They are right. He has no right to ask this. Yet a different instinct, born of a weariness with the ugliness of the situation and a burgeoning sense of her own quiet strength, began to take hold. "I understand, Helen," Jordan said, her voice calm but resolute. She then met the judge's gaze. "Your Honour, I appreciate the clarification. However," she paused, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips, "I am willing to agree to my ex-husband's request." Helen's eyebrows shot up in surprise, and even the judge looked taken aback. "Jordan," Helen began, her voice laced with concern, "are you certain? This is unnecessary. We can certainly contest this." Jordan gently shook her head. "I know, but I have my reasons." She turned her gaze back to Norman. His face broke into a wide, well-satisfied smile. He had likely anticipated a scene, tears, perhaps even pleas for reconsideration. But Jordan's unexpected compliance seemed to validate his petty demand. "I will return all your gifts," she continued, her gaze unwavering. "Each one." A flicker of surprise crossed Norman's features, quickly masked by his smugness. Stepping out of the imposing courthouse doors, the weight of the decree and the bizarre aftermath pressing down on her, Jordan inhaled deeply. The cool air filled her lungs. The chapter was closed, but a new unwritten one lay ahead, and for the first time that day a faint sense of anticipation stirred within her. A difficult task lay ahead, the meticulous gathering of memories materialized in objects, and the formal transfer of possessions. She would do this. She would do it with grace. The following week came a meticulous excavation of the past. Jordan turned her home inside out, every closet, every drawer, and every forgotten box yielding its secrets. From dusty corners emerged photographs, sentimental trinkets, faded postcards, and the innocent artwork of her children, tangible fragments of a life once shared, each item a silent testament to Norman's past gestures. The silence in the room was heavy, thick with the dust motes dancing in the weak afternoon light. Jordan sat on the floor, a half-empty box beside her. A collection of memories scattered around like fallen leaves. Each object she picked up was a shard of a life she thought she knew, a life now fractured beyond repair. With a sigh that carried the weight of weeks of unshed tears, she reached for a small velvet pouch. Inside nestled a pair of delicate gold earrings encrusted with diamonds, their intricate design catching the light. A faint smile touched Jordan's lips, a bittersweet ache in her heart. She remembered the day Norman had given them to her. They were on their first trip to the mountains, the air crisp and clean, the sky a brilliant, endless blue. They had spent the morning learning to ski, her clumsy attempts eliciting his patient laughter. That evening, by the crackling fire in their cosy chalet, he had presented her with the pouch. "For you," he said, his eyes warm, "to remind you of the shining trails we conquered today." Now the earnings felt cold in her hand, a stark reminder of a summit they had failed to reach together. Next, her fingers brushed against a soft, heather-grey cashmere shawl, lying folded at the bottom of a drawer in their bedroom. Jordan picked it up, the luxurious fabric cool and smooth against her fingertips. A wave of warmth, quickly followed by a pang of sadness, washed over her. She remembered the Christmas they had spent in a small cabin nestled in the mountains. Snow fell silently outside, blanketing the world in white, and inside a fire crackled merrily in the hearth. Norman had surprised her with this shawl, pulling it from behind his back with a flourish. "To keep you warm on our winter adventures," he had said, his eyes crinkling at the corners as she draped it around her shoulders. She had cherished the shawl, wearing it on chilly evenings, feeling enveloped in his thoughtfulness. Now, holding it felt like holding a fragile piece of a dream that had evaporated with the spring thaw. Her gaze fell upon a framed photograph on the nearby table. It was a candid shot of them laughing, their faces flushed with happiness, on a trip to the coast. Beside the photograph lay a heavy, elegant watch with a dark leather strap and a sophisticated silver face. Norman had presented it to her on their 5th anniversary. She recalled the celebratory dinner at their favourite restaurant, the soft candlelight flickering on the polished wood, the weight of the velvet box in his hand. "For all the time we've shared, and all the time to come," he had said, his voice filled with a tenderness she now struggled to recall. The intricate workings of the watch, visible through the sapphire crystal on the back, had symbolized to her the complex and precious mechanism of their relationship. She had worn it every day since, the steady ticking a constant reminder of their intertwined lives. Now the weight of the watch felt different, a heavy burden representing time irrevocably lost and the stark reality of their separate futures. With a heavy heart, Jordan placed the earrings, the photograph, the cashmere shawl, and the expensive watch into the card box. Stepping into Molly's pastel-hued bedroom felt like a violation of something sacred. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air and landing on the intricately carved wooden carousel that stood on her dresser. It had been a gift from Norman on her 7th birthday, its painted ponies frozen mid-gallop, a silent testament to a fleeting moment of paternal tenderness. This fragile thing held a memory. Molly's delighted squeals as Norman wound the key, the gentle lullaby it played filling the room with a magical charm. Jordan's fingers traced the smooth wood, a lump forming in her throat. To pack this away felt like silencing a piece of Molly's joy. In the corner, nestled among a collection of well-loved plush toys, sat a large, soft unicorn with shimmering silver wings. Norman had bought it for her during a rare family trip to the seaside. She had named him Stardust and confided all her secrets to him. Jordan gently stroked its velvety mane, the familiar softness a painful reminder of a happier time. In Trevor's room, amidst scattered Lego creations and well-thumbed graphic novels, lay a high-quality drone with a sleek, futuristic design. It had been Norman's gift for Trevor's 12th birthday, sparking a passion for robotics and engineering. Norman had spent hours teaching him how to pilot it. Their shared excitement was palpable as the drone whirred through the sky, capturing breathtaking views of their neighbourhood. Jordan hesitated, but everything had been decided in the court. Beside the desk rested a gleaming electric guitar, propped against his amplifier. Norman's gift for Trevor's 11th birthday. Norman had even sat with Trevor a few times, awkwardly trying to strum chords and listen to the boy's enthusiastic, if sometimes off-key, renditions of his favourite rock songs. Jordan ran her hand along the smooth neck of the guitar, the polished wood cool beneath her fingertips. Gathering these gifts, these tangible pieces of a father's past affection, Jordan felt like dismantling not just their shared history with Norman, but also a part of the children's innocent world. It was a heartbreaking task. On the appointed day, a small delivery van pulled up at Norman's new address. A burly driver and his equally stout companion grunted as they wrestled 5 massive cardboard boxes onto the pristine pavement. High above, on the balcony of his newly leased apartment, a temporary love nest shared with Sienna, Norman watched the scene unfold, a smug curl to his lips. In his mind, this cumbersome delivery was a tangible symbol of his triumph, Jordan's forced concession to his righteous demands.
"Sign here, pal,"
the driver grunted, extending a clipboard with a delivery manifest towards Norman. Norman scrawled his signature with a dismissive flourish, shoving the paper back towards the driver without a second glance. His thoughts were already racing ahead, picturing Sienna's impressed gasp as she beheld the treasures he had so decisively reclaimed from his former wife. Sienna's eyes were bright with avaricious anticipation as Norman began to haul the boxes into their expensively furnished living room. The task was physically tiring, but Sienna's giddy excitement was undeniably infectious. She clapped her hands together like a child on Christmas morning, her laughter echoing through the pristine apartment. Setting down the final box, Norman wiped his brow and turned to her, a teasing glint in his eyes. "Satisfied now, my goddess?"
"Utterly,"
Sienna purred, throwing her arms around him in a tight embrace. Norman chuckled against her mouth.
"All right, let's survey the spoils."
Sienna wasted no time. She pounced on the boxes, her manicured fingers tearing through the packing tape with impatient precision. She zeroed in on one marked with Jordan's initials, ignoring the others in her acquisitive frenzy. The box sprang open, revealing Jordan's treasures, each item wrapped in delicate paper like relics from a discarded life. Sienna gasped, plucking out a pair of earrings, their stones flashing with an inner fire like a cascade of bright light. "Oh, Norman, look!" she exclaimed, holding them up to the light. Next, she unearthed rings, a delicate pearl necklace and a silver bracelet, trying each on with gleeful squeals, admiring her reflection in a nearby mirror. She plunged her hands back into the box, sifting through designer handbags and a soft cashmere shawl, exclaiming over each item, draping the shawl around her shoulders and striking poses. "It's all mine now," she declared, twirling around the living room, a note of triumph ringing in her voice. Meanwhile, Norman turned his attention to a heavier box filled with the children's belongings. He sifted through it all with a detached air, his fingers brushing against Trevor's sleek drone and his well-loved guitar. He set them aside, mentally calculating their resale value. Next was Molly's musical carousel, its gentle charm now utterly lost on him. "These should fetch a decent price," he muttered more to himself than to Sienna, who was far too engrossed in her new-found trinkets to pay him any mind. Then Sienna opened a smaller box, its contents decidedly less glamorous. Inside lay photographs, faded birthday cards and a stack of children's drawings. Her lips curled with disdain. "Norman, this box is useless junk," she said, tossing a handful of the drawings onto the floor. "Just throw it in the trash." Norman cast a cursory glance at the contents, barely registering them. "Yeah, sure," he said absently, already repacking all things back. He gathered the box of papers and photographs and carried it out to the garage. To him, it was merely clutter. He had what he wanted: Jordan's surrender, Sienna's adoration, a decent haul of goods to sell or flaunt. But as he glanced at the scattered drawings on the floor, the ones he'd missed shoving back into the box, Molly's trees and flowers, Trevor's simple houses, a faint, fleeting flicker stirred within his chest. He suppressed the feeling,
turning away to rejoin Sienna. "Worth every second of that courtroom nonsense," Sienna said in a smug voice, adjusting a pair of diamond earrings. Norman nodded, forcing a smile, but his gaze drifted back towards the garage door, where the forgotten little box lay. Victory was his, he told himself. For Jordan, meanwhile, the initial act of packing and parting with the objects had brought a strange sense of release, a quiet reclaiming of her dignity. But as the weeks wore on, the weight of it all settled upon her like a suffocating fog. When the phone rang, an unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. Jordan answered it cautiously. "Hello? Jordan, darling, it's Sienna." Her voice was saccharine, dripping with a sweetness that immediately set Jordan on edge. She froze, her grip tightening on the receiver. "What do you need, Sienna?" Jordan asked, her tone even, trying to brace herself for whatever was coming. "Oh, I just thought I'd call and see how you were doing," Sienna said, a false note of concern lacing her voice. "It must be so difficult for you, going through all of this. I mean, losing Norman, having to give up all those lovely things." She paused, letting the words hang in the air, then added with a triumphant smile in her voice, "I just wanted to share a little something with you. Right now, as we speak, I'm wearing those absolutely gorgeous earrings you had. Norman can't take his eyes off them." A sickening lurch twisted in Jordan's stomach, the image of Sienna, preening and flaunting the earrings Norman had once given her, flashing in her mind. She pressed her lips together, forcing herself to remain calm, refusing to give Sienna the satisfaction of a reaction. "Good for you," she managed, her voice tight. But Sienna wasn't finished. "You know what I find particularly thrilling? Knowing that I conquered a married man, that I made him strip his ex-wife of everything, the jewels, the kids' toys, your pathetic little life. It's so exhilarating." That was the breaking point. The fragile threads of Jordan's restraint snapped like a taut string, and the simmering anger within her erupted into a white-hot fury. "You think this is a game, Sienna?" Jordan finally spat into the silent room, her voice trembling not with fear, but with an untamed rage that had been simmering beneath the surface for weeks. The carefully constructed walls of her composure were finally cracking. "You think you've won something. You're nothing but a scavenger, picking at the discarded pieces of what we once had." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "Norman didn't choose you because you're special, Sienna. Don't delude yourself. He chose you because you were easy. A fleeting distraction, a shiny new toy that will lose its luster the moment he tires of its novelty. And trust me, he will tire of you." A stunned silence hung heavy on the other end of the conversation. Emboldened by the overdue release of her fury, Jordan pressed on. "You want to gloat about those earrings? Go ahead, wear it, and also my pearl necklace until it chokes the very breath from your smug lungs. But don't you ever dare call me again, acting like you've conquered anything of value. You haven't. You're not worth my time, Sienna, and neither is he." She could almost hear Sienna's practised composure falter, a crack appearing in the veneer of her self-assuredness. "How dare you?" But Jordan cut her off. "You wanted a reaction? Well, you got one. Now, for the love of all that is decent, stay out of my life." The weeks that followed Sienna's venomous call were a descent into a shadowy landscape for Jordan. Sleepless nights bled into one another, the quiet darkness offering no respite from the relentless churn of her thoughts. Memories sharp and painful replayed behind her closed eyelids. Norman's smugly triumphant grin in the courtroom, Sienna's predatory smile. Sleep offered no escape, only a deeper immersion into the bitter reality of her loss. The quiet hum of depression that had been simmering beneath the surface since the finality of the divorce now surged, a dark and powerful current threatening to pull her under. Simple everyday tasks that had once been routine, making breakfast for Trevor and Molly, driving them to school, even just getting out of bed, now felt like insurmountable mountains. One bleak morning, after another long night spent staring at the ceiling, the silence of her bedroom amplifying the turmoil in her heart, Jordan finally broke. The carefully constructed dam of her resilience crumbled. With trembling hands, she reached for her phone and called her psychotherapist. She couldn't cope. A quiet therapy session and the subtle adjustments of medication, each a small step towards equilibrium. Initially, Jordan spoke little, the words trapped behind a high wall of grief and anger. But slowly, with the gentle guidance of a kind therapist, she began the arduous process of untangling the knotted threads of pain, anger, and the insidious self-blame that had taken root in her soul. Soon she gained a fragile but steadily growing sense of acceptance, a quiet understanding that healing was a journey, not a destination. Yes, Norman's betrayal, Sienna's calculated cruelty, the loss of those material tokens that had once symbolized their shared life. They were real, and they had wounded her deeply, but they did not define her. She was not the broken, discarded ex-wife they had tried to make her feel like. She was a mother of 2 incredible children, a survivor of a marriage that had tested the very core of her strength, and a woman capable of forging a new path, one step at a time. Jordan's gaze softened as she watched Trevor, her earnest son completely absorbed in the intricate world unfolding on his computer screen. The small, whirring sounds of tiny motors emanated from the corner of the living room where his latest robotics project, a sleek silver rover, meticulously navigated a course marked by colourful tape on the carpet. His brow was furrowed in concentration, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he tweaked lines of code. His quiet murmurs, a language only he and the machine understood. Nearby, in the living room, Molly moved with a fluid grace that belied her young years. The soft strains of classical music filled the air as she practised a new ballet sequence, her small body a picture of focused dedication, each plie and pirouette executed with a surprising elegance. To witness their focused joy, their absorption in these separate worlds, brought a quiet solace to Jordan, a reminder of the beautiful, resilient spirits she was nurturing. "Mum?" Trevor's voice, usually brimming with youthful energy and a touch of playful mischief, held a note of unexpected gentleness as he looked up from his laptop, his intelligent eyes filled with a concern beyond his years. He had always been keenly attuned to her emotions, a silent observer of her inner world. "Are you okay?" Jordan offered him a small, genuine smile, a fragile bloom of warmth that reached her eyes. "Yes, sweetie," she reassured him, her voice soft but firm. "Everything will be all right." Molly, her cheeks flushed with a rosy hue from her dancing, extended a small, graceful hand towards Jordan, her bright eyes sparkling with an innocent invitation. "Mummy, come dance with me. It's this new step my teacher showed us. It's like flying." A genuine laugh escaped Jordan's lips, a sound that had been too infrequent recently. "You know your old mum has 2 left feet, my little butterfly," she said, her voice filled with affection. "But all right, show me your flying." With Trevor's quiet intelligence and Molly's vibrant spirit illuminating her way, Jordan made a silent vow. She would build a future not defined by the wreckage of her past, but by the boundless love she shared with her children, and the unwritten chapters of their lives, filled with possibility and hope. Weeks drifted into months, the rhythm of Jordan's new life slowly finding its own steady beat. One crisp autumn afternoon, sunlight streaming through the cafe window, her old friend Valentina leaned forward, her voice lowered with a hint of gossip. "You won't believe what I heard about Norman and Sienna. Apparently, Sienna had a baby boy. Everyone thinks he must have been conceived during the divorce, but they kept it completely under wraps." A brief wave of something akin to, not sadness, but a detached curiosity washed over Jordan. A son. She pictured a tiny, vulnerable infant, caught in the messy aftermath of Norman and Sienna's volatile relationship. Valentina's lips pursed with disapproval. "Just imagine, they are not married yet, and honestly, from what I've gathered, things are far from blissful." Valentina painted a stark picture of Sienna's foray into motherhood, disinterested, often leaving the baby in the care of a hired nurse, while she indulged in extravagant shopping sprees and long, uninterrupted sleeps. Whispers through their mutual acquaintances suggested Sienna was on antidepressants, exhibiting a disturbing lack of love and patience with the demands of a newborn. "It's a complete disaster, Jordan," Valentina concluded, shaking her head sadly. "That poor little boy." Jordan felt no sense of triumph, no satisfaction in Sienna's apparent misery. Instead, a quiet wave of empathy washed over her for the innocent child caught in the crossfire of adult failings. Weeks later, Valentina's voice on the phone was laced with a grim urgency. "Jordan, you're not going to believe this. Norman and Sienna had a huge, ugly fight. Apparently, he hit her. The police were called and he spent the night in jail." A cold knot tightened in Jordan's stomach. Norman had never, in all their years together, raised a hand to her, and indeed the shimmering illusion of Norman and Sienna's passionate romance began to fray soon after Jordan's boxes arrived. What had blazed as a fierce, all-consuming love cooled, morphing into something far less glamorous and infinitely more complicated. Norman, who had once viewed Sienna as his liberator, began to see her with a clarity that chilled him. He recognized the skillful manipulator beneath the alluring facade, the puppeteer who had played him as expertly as a grandmaster commands a chessboard. Sienna's demands were relentless, an unyielding tide. Norman could grit his teeth and bear her endless shopping sprees, the designer clothes that piled up like unspoken accusations in their apartment, the extravagant dinners she insisted upon, as if to prove something to a silent audience. He swallowed his anxieties and paid the bills, even as his bank account dwindled and the knot of stress in his stomach tightened. But her emotional demands tormented much more. She craved constant validation, her moods swinging like a pendulum, one moment showering him with affection, the next lashing out with accusations of some perceived slight. "You don't appreciate me, Norman," she would snap, swirling the wine in her glass, her eyes glinting with resentment. "After everything I've done for you, it's still not enough, is it?" At first their nights in bed had ignited a spark in Norman, a stark contrast to the predictable rhythm of his marriage with Jordan. But what had once thrilled him now felt like a descent into darkness that left him uneasy, even repulsed. More and more often, night after night, he retreated to his garage to sleep, where he could feel a strange sense of solace. There, hidden among the jumble of Jordan's unopened boxes, he would seek refuge in a bottle of whisky, the burning liquid a temporary anaesthetic for the turmoil in his mind. "Norman, you're pathetic," she'd hiss, her nostrils flaring as she caught the faint scent of alcohol on his breath, her eyes narrowing with undisguised contempt. And Norman, once a confident man who strode out of courtrooms with a wry smile, now felt like a dog on a leash, yanked this way and that by her whims. He found himself nodding to her demands, agreeing to her tirades, anything to avoid another explosive argument. The apartment, once envisioned as a symbol of his new liberated life, now felt like a gilded cage. Things were spiralling downwards, the arguments growing more frequent and more vicious. The night his hand flew out in a blind rage, striking her cheek, was a new low, a descent he could never have imagined. The flashing blue lights of the police car, the cold, sterile feel of the jail cell, the whispered judgments of the neighbours. It was a brutal awakening. One evening, after yet another sharp-edged argument over her latest extravagant purchases, he laid once more on the small, uncomfortable couch in the garage. Lying there, the scent of dust and forgotten things filling his nostrils, his gaze fell upon the box Jordan had sent. An impulse, a flicker of curiosity in the dull ache of his despair, moved him. He had to see what else was inside. Tucked neatly within were hundreds of photographs bound together with a faded ribbon. As the photographs spilled onto the cold concrete floor, happy faces looked up at him, his own, younger and carefree, Jordan's, radiant with a smile he hadn't seen in years, and little Trevor's, his face smeared with melting ice cream. There they were, on the shore, sun-kissed and laughing, the waves a playful roar in their background. There they were again at the amusement park, arms wrapped around each other on a spinning carousel, their joy palpable even in the still image. On the back of each memory, Jordan's neat script penned the details, each word a gentle echo of a life shared. Our first vacation together, the most wonderful Thanksgiving, that trip to Hawaii, the best New Year's Eve of our lives. A lump formed in his throat, a painful knot of regret tightening with each passing image. Tears pricked at his eyes as he carefully set the photographs aside, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for another small stack. These were children's drawings. The colours faded with time, but were vibrant in the landscape of his memory. Lopsided houses beneath a perpetually slanted sun, stick figures with awkwardly joined hands. Each one bore a child's uneven printing. "I love Papa and Mama. Happy birthday, Daddy." A sharp ache pierced Norman's chest, the simple words a dagger through the fog of his denial. He continued to sift through the box, compelled by a force he couldn't resist. There were cards he had written to Jordan in their early years, romantic verses penned in his once passionate hand, declarations of love that now seemed to belong to another man entirely. "You are my forever, Jordan. I will never let you go." Promises of eternal devotion now mocked him with their broken reality. Suddenly, the garage door creaked open, slicing through the quiet with Sienna's sharp, irritated voice. "Norman, what are you doing out here? I've been calling you for 10 minutes. Norman didn't lift his head, his gaze fixed on a small picture of his family holding hands under a bright yellow sun. His silence only amplified Sienna's annoyance. She strode towards him, her heels clicking impatiently on the concrete floor. "Are you ignoring me? What is all this junk?" She peered over his shoulder, her lips twisting in distaste at the sight of the photographs and drawings scattered around him. "Oh, wonderful! You've unearthed Jordan's trash. Why are you wasting your time with this?" Norman's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, clutching the child's drawing in his hand. He picked up another photograph, this one capturing Jordan's unrestrained laughter as a 1-year-old Molly smeared pureed carrots across the high-chair tray. The joy radiating from the image was a stark contrast to the coldness that had settled in his heart. "Just throw it away, Norman. We don't need her clutter filling our space." He finally looked up at her, and something in his eyes gave her pause. A complex blend of grief, anger, and a dawning clarity. "This isn't clutter," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "These are my children, my family." Sienna blinked, momentarily taken aback by the steely resolve in his tone. "Your family?" she scoffed, recovering quickly. "You mean the one you walked out on? Don't get sentimental now, Norman. You wanted this life. You chose me." He stared at the woman he had once believed was his salvation, the one who had promised him a passion that would eclipse everything he had known. "I was wrong," he said softly, the words escaping before he could fully process their weight. Sienna's eyes narrowed, her voice rising. "What did you say?" But Norman didn't answer. He turned back to the box, his hands now moving with a newfound tenderness, almost reverence, as he gathered the photographs and drawings. He stood clutching them to his chest and walked past her into the living room without a word. Sienna's angry shouts followed him. "Don't you dare walk away from me!" But her words seemed distant, insignificant against the sudden profound shift within him. Norman stood in the dim light of the living room, the open folder with pictures at his feet, its contents spilled across the coffee table like a map of a life he had carelessly discarded. Suddenly he saw a folded slip of paper. "I've returned everything you wanted, Norman. All the photographs, the children's drawings, the things, the toys, the jewellery and the gadgets. All the material things. But what you never gave, the love, the care, the support, the attention, those are the things I kept. Those are the things you can never take away from me or from our children." The paper slipped from his numb fingers, fluttering to the floor like a fragile butterfly. Norman's knees buckled and he sank onto the edge of the worn couch, the world around him tilting and fracturing. The weight of Jordan's words pressed down on him, each one a stark mirror, reflecting his profound failures. Sienna's voice sliced through the silence, dripping with contempt. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her gaze sweeping over the scattered contents of the box. "Why did you bring it here? Tell me immediately," she demanded, impatience lacing her tone. "Throw it out. Or are you just going to sit here and weep over old pictures like some pathetic loser?" Norman remained silent, Jordan's quiet, damning words echoing in the hollow chambers of his heart. Love, care, support, attention. The next day, Jordan's phone rang. The name flashing across the screen, sending a shiver down her spine. Norman. She hesitated, her finger hovering over the answer button, a battle waging within her. Finally, with a deep breath, she swiped to answer. "Hello?" "Jordan, it's me." Norman's voice was softer than she had ever heard it, stripped of its usual arrogance. I need to apologize. For everything. For the divorce, for the gifts, for the way I treated you and the children. I was wrong, Jordan. Terribly wrong. And I am so deeply sorry." He paused, his breathing ragged on the other end of the line. "I would like to meet if you're willing, just to talk." Jordan's heart gave a strange lurch, a confusing mix of shock and something else, something she hadn't expected to feel. She ended the call politely, promising to think about it. But as she sat in her kitchen staring at the silent phone, the unsettling thought of giving him a second chance began to take root. Could he have truly changed? Was there a way to rebuild something? Not for them, perhaps, but for Trevor and Molly. Seeking clarity, Jordan reached for the one person who could always help her navigate the tangled web of her emotions, her best friend, Valentina. Jordan poured out the story, and Valentina's voice, usually warm and vibrant, was hard and unwavering. "Don't let him back in, Jordan, not under any circumstances. Nothing good will come of it. This man betrayed you, he lied to you, he cheated on you with Sienna, and then he had the audacity to demand your jewellery and the children's gifts back, as if you were some pawn shop. He humiliated you, dragged your name through the mud, in court, with that ridiculous stunt, and tarnished everything you built together. Where was his conscience then? He didn't have one." A cold knot tightened in Jordan's chest, the memories flooding back with brutal clarity. Norman's smug smirk in the courtroom, Sienna's predatory gleam of triumph, the tremor in her own hands as she packed those damning boxes. Valentina wasn't finished. "Remember how he announced the divorce, Jordan?" she pressed, her voice sharp with indignation. "So cold, so dismissive, as if you were nothing more than an inconvenience. He walked away without a backward glance, parading Sienna while you were left to pick up the shattered pieces of Trevor and Molly's lives. He didn't care about your pain, Jordan. He didn't care about the children." Valentina's gaze softened slightly, but her conviction remained unwavering. "And now he's sorry, because his shiny new life with Sienna crumbled. This isn't remorse, Jordan, it's convenience. He's reaching out because he's lost control, not because he suddenly values what he threw away. I thought maybe he realized what he lost," Jordan murmured, a fragile hope flickering within her, despite Valentina's harsh words. "Maybe he wants to fix things." Valentina's voice gentled further, laced with concern, but her resolve didn't waver. "Jordan, after everything he put you through, why on earth would you waste another moment on that manipulative man? He didn't love you the way you deserved to be loved. Love doesn't tear someone down and then come crawling back when the grass isn't greener on the other side. He's not here for you, honey. He's here because he's lost his footing." Valentina's voice grew firmer again. "You've fought so hard to build this new life, to be strong for yourself and the children. Don't let him drag you back into his chaos. You deserve so much more than his hollow apologies." Jordan's eyes cleared, Valentina's words piercing the lingering fog of her emotions like a beacon in the darkness. Valentina was right. Norman's apologies, however sincere they might seem, couldn't erase the scars of his betrayal, and she owed him nothing, certainly not another chance after everything. "You're right," Jordan finally said, her voice gaining a newfound strength, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from her chest. "I won't meet him. I won't let him have that hold over me any more." Valentina's face softened into a proud smile. "That's my girl. You've got this, Jordan." She tapped Jordan's chest over her heart. "You have everything you need right here." That evening Jordan sat at her kitchen table, a blank canvas before her, and composed a message to Norman. "Norman, I appreciate your apology, but I don't want to meet. I have moved forward, and I wish you well. Please do not contact me again." She pressed send, placing the phone down with a decisive click, her hands steady. Turning to the canvas, she picked up a brush and began to paint. A bold stroke of crimson, vibrant and unapologetic. Her life, her love, her strength, they were hers, and no one, not even Norman, could ever take them away again. Upstairs, the sounds of Trevor and Molly's cheerful bickering over a board game drifted down. Jordan joined them, laughing as Molly tried to sneak an extra turn. Their easy camaraderie was a balm to her soul. In the months that followed Jordan's firm decision to close the door on Norman, her life settled into a rhythm of quiet contentment. The local art gallery, where she worked part-time, had become a sanctuary, and her own vibrant canvases began to garner praise and a small but growing following. Trevor's robotics projects earned accolades, while Molly's graceful dance performances graced local recitals. The occasional visits from Valentina, filtered and brief, that Norman and Sienna had finally parted ways for good. Jordan met with a polite nod and a swift change of subject. Her gaze was fixedly firmed forward, not back. Then one bright spring afternoon, Jordan was at the gallery overseeing the setup for a new exhibition of local artists, when a distinguished woman approached her. In her late 50s, with keen, intelligent eyes and a warm, genuine smile, she introduced herself as Lydia, the curator of a prestigious art place in the city. "I've been following your work," Lydia said, gesturing towards one of Jordan's striking abstract pieces. "This is powerful. You have a talent." Jordan's cheeks flushed with a warmth she wasn't accustomed to, the praise feeling both unexpected and deeply gratifying. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice touched with awe. "That means the world to me." Lydia's smile widened, radiating genuine enthusiasm. "I'm curating an exhibition in the capital next month, and I would be honoured to feature 3 of your pieces prominently. This is a significant opportunity, Jordan." Jordan's breath caught in her throat, a sudden lightness making her head spin. Her art seen by thousands? It was a dream she hadn't dared to voice, a validation of the passion she had rediscovered after years of quiet dormancy. I'm honoured," she stammered, her heart fluttering like a trapped bird. "That's not all," Lydia added, a twinkle in her eye. "We also have a grant programme for emerging artists, and I would very much like to nominate you. This includes funding for a solo exhibition, a stipend to support your work, and mentorship to help elevate your career to the next level. You are precisely the kind of artist we want to champion. This includes funding for a solo exhibition, a stipend to support your work, and mentorship to help elevate your career to the next level. You are precisely the kind of artist we want to champion." Tears welled in Jordan's eyes, but a joyful laugh bubbled up, pure and uninhibited. I don't know what to say. This is incredible." "Say yes," Lydia urged warmly, her hand briefly touching Lydia's arm. "You've earned it." Jordan did say yes, and the following weeks were a whirlwind of focused energy and burgeoning excitement. She selected her strongest pieces for the exhibition, poured her soul into new creations, and felt a sense of pride bloom within her that she hadn't known existed. When she shared the news with Trevor and Molly, their shouts of delight filled the house, followed by enthusiastic hugs. "Mum, you're going to be famous!" Molly exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. Trevor, ever the pragmatist, grinned and added, "Just don't forget us when you are." The opening night of the exhibition was a vibrant tapestry of people, critics, collectors, local art enthusiasts, all drawn to Jordan's canvases, which glowed under the gallery lights. Jordan, elegant in a simple black dress, moved through the crowd, accepting compliments with a grateful smile, Trevor and Molly radiating pride at her side. As she spoke with a respected critic, her gaze drifted across the room and landed on a familiar figure standing alone at the far end, before her largest painting, a bold and evocative piece titled The Price of Freedom. It was Norman. He looked different, older, with lines etched around his eyes that hadn't been there before. He stood with his hands in his pockets, his posture subdued, gazing at the painting as if it held answers he couldn't calculate. Jordan's heart gave a strange, almost imperceptible flutter, not of longing but of surprise. How had he known? Excusing herself, she approached him, her steps measured, her expression carefully neutral. "Norman," she said, her voice calm and even. "What are you doing here?" He turned, a flicker of startled recognition in his eyes, and for a fleeting moment she saw the ghost of the man from the photographs in the box, vulnerable, human. I heard about your exhibition," he said quietly. "Valentina mentioned it. I didn't come to trouble you, Jordan. I had to see this. Your work, it's incredible." She studied him, searching for any hint of manipulation, but found none. His eyes were red-rimmed and his shoulders slumped. "Thank you," she replied, maintaining a polite distance. "But why are you really here, Norman?" He swallowed hard, his gaze returning to the painting, the swirling colours a testament to her strength and resilience. "I found the box," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "The photographs, the drawings, your note. It broke me, Jordan. I've been trying to make amends. I reached out to Trevor and Molly, started therapy. I want to be a better father to our children again. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I needed you to know. I see what I lost, and I am proud of you, Jordan. You are everything I wasn't." A wave of emotion washed over Jordan, but it didn't soften her resolve. She no longer needed his validation. "I appreciate that, Norman," she said steadily, "but this," she gestured around the gallery to the admiring crowd, to her beaming children, "this is mine. I built this without you. I wish you well, Norman." He nodded, a shadow of pain crossing his face, but he didn't argue. "I understand," he said quietly. I hope someday the children will allow me to try." "That will be their decision," Jordan replied, her tone firm but not unkind. "Goodbye, Norman." She turned and walked back to Trevor and Molly, who hadn't even noticed his presence. As she wrapped her arms around them, the weight of his words dissipated, replaced by the tangible joy of the present moment. As the evening drew to a close, Lydia drew Jordan aside, presenting her with a formal letter confirming the grant and a cheque for the first instalment of her stipend. "You're going to go far, Jordan," she said, her eyes filled with genuine admiration. "This is just the beginning." Jordan smiled, tucking the letter safely into her bag. She looked at her children, their faces alight with pride, and then at her paintings, each one a vibrant stroke in the evolving story of her life. Norman's shadow had passed, leaving only a faint ripple on the sea of her triumph, both as a mother and as an artist. And the most beautiful truth of all was that her future belonged entirely to her, bright and boundless.